Okay, we'll go right into questions.
All right. Hi, Ladell. Good morning.
Morning.
Questions for Coach Betts. First question is from John Steppe from the Gazette.
Hey, Ladell, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Wanted to ask you about the two freshmen, Kamari and Terrell. What stood out to you since they got on campus, and what do you think their role could be once Caleb and Jazz come back?
Well, I'll start with the first part of that question, which is what do I think of those guys? I mean, they've come in with a lot of maturity, especially for some young guys. They jumped right in terms of the off-season program with the summer workouts and all that kind of stuff. And actually, Terrell got here back in January, so he's been here a little bit longer than Kamari. So he had a little bit lay of the land, so to speak, before we got to the fall camp. But those guys have done a good job in terms of maturity, in terms of showing up on time, paying attention in meetings, and that's what you love to see out of young guys. But you don't always know if you're going to get that until you start coaching. But so they've done a good job there. And then on top of that, as far as athletically, I mean, they're both talented. Very different players. Kamari's more of a natural tailback per se because that's what he's always played. TJ's a little bit jack of all trades. He's played receiver, slot. He's played quarterback. He's played running back. So he's got a pretty broad skill set. Returner. So they're different in that regard. But yeah, so that's kind of how they fit in, so to speak, or how they've made the transition. But as far as what their role would be when Caleb and Jazz get back, I mean, that's to be determined. Who knows? One, you never know how long an injury can last. You hope it's only a week or so, but we have no idea. So I just try to tell those guys, hey, stay ready. And I think they've done a good job with that. And I try to tell the entire room to stay ready because, as you can see, it's been different people every week. But they're ready, and we'll cross that bridge as far as roles when those other guys do return.
Next question is from Scott Docterman.
Yeah, Ladell, I've been really fascinated watching the way you guys have run the ball this year, and partly because of schematics. When you have it seems like a lot of gap and a lot of counter versus the past where I was just kind of dabbled in. How does that, you think, emphasize some of the runners on your roster and then why they've been so successful in running that scheme?
I think it's twofold. I think it emphasizes the type of linemen that we have too. Aggressive guys that like to pull and hit. I think we have those guys that want to do that on the offensive line, and it's something that we tried to work on a lot back in the spring. Try to add that to our arsenal as far as the run game, so we could have it in the fall. And I think you're starting to see some of those dividends pay off. And then when you talk about the back specifically, I'm partial to downhill runners. I think because I was one myself. So on the recruiting trail, I think what I gravitate to is guys that really like to attack the defense. And I think that's what you're seeing out of our runners, are guys that are getting downhill and trying to be aggressive with the defense.
Next question is from Chad Leistico.
Hey, good morning, Ladell. College or pro, what's the craziest environment you've ever played in, and how do you communicate to your young freshmen going into this what to expect on Saturday?
Wow, good question. College or pro? I'd say in college, it's always tough when you go over to Iowa State, just to the heated rivalry. But I've also been up to Penn State back in 2000. We were fortunate enough to get out of there with the win in overtime. That was a pretty crazy environment. But when I think of the pros, I think of places like Dallas, just because of the rivalry between us and Washington and Dallas at the time. Philly, the Philly fans are always pretty brutal. So I played in a few venues that get a little loud and a little crazy. And sorry if I missed the second part of your question.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Kamari, Terrell going into this crazy environment as true freshmen. How do you kind of communicate your experience to them and help relax them going into this huge stage?
Well, it's hard to really put into words what that environment is going to feel like until they get there. So you try to talk to them about it. And I know Coach Ferentz has done the same thing. He's been talking to our players all week because we have a number of players that have never played up there before. So it's going to be a new environment for not just the backs, but more than a few people on the team. But until they actually get in that environment and feel it for themselves, they won't really know what we're trying to communicate to them. But the only thing I really try to make sure that I'm getting across to my players is make sure you take care of the details now. Get all those I's dotted, all the T's crossed, because if you don't have a good sense or good feel for the game plan now, in front of 100,000 people is not the time to be trying to figure it out. So I just try to make sure that, listen, lock in and practice, make sure you get all those things ironed out so that when you get into that stadium and it's loud, you're at the end of the day, it's just treating it like practice, just people watching.
All right, next question is from Adam Jacoby.
Sorry, I was on mute. Coach Betts, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So going back to last week, specifically the touchdown that LaShawn Williams scored on that screen pass. One, is there anything that really sort of stood out to you on the play, whether it's something that LaShawn did or anybody else on the play? And then is that indicative in any way of the growth that he's made from last season to this season? Just his ability to make that play, is that something that's sort of new this year?
Great question, actually. As you asked that question, I'm kind of thinking back to a moment last year where we had a screen called. I think it was the first or second game, I can't remember, and it was LaShawn that was in there, and his guy blitzed, and he didn't quite see it at the time to know to bluff that guy and then slip him to get out. Not to get in too much of the schematics, but the exact same scenario came up this past Saturday where his guy in protection is blitzing, and LaShawn now a year later has enough wherewithal to understand, hey, I need to go set this guy, bluff him, make him think that we're actually trying to pass the ball downfield, and then slip him out to the flats. And that's exactly what happened. It was a great play call, great execution by the guys, and now it's him and Logan Jones running down the sideline by themselves. So it was a well executed play, well timed call play because they were blitzing too. So you always want to get a screen to a blitz, and it worked out great.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
The next question is from David Eichholt.
Hey, Ladell, appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Just thinking back to, going back to the running backs and going into this type of environment, how do you balance coaching those guys up to kind of calm their nerves? How much do you let their teammates kind of do that for them? And how much of it do you just kind of let them kind of figure it out on their own? How do you kind of balance doing that?
I don't try to hype or overhype the moment that will be on Saturday night. I mean, it's going to be a loud environment. It's going to be a lot of energy. It's going to be crazy, a whiteout, everything, night game, prime time, all of that. I don't want to overhype it because I don't want to make those guys any more anxious or nervous than what they may already naturally feel. So you address it at the front end of the week. And then after that, I just tell them, hey, focus on what you need to do in terms of practice. Going back to what I said earlier, which is the details, because those are what's really going to carry you throughout the night. When you're tired, when it's third and short, when it's fourth quarter, tie ball, whatever the situation may be, you have to go back and rest on those fundamentals and not get caught up in the environment. And they have to figure that out for themselves once they get into the game.
Next question is from Tyler Tashman.
Hey, Coach, I hope you're doing well. With Kamari and Terrell, just what all do you remember about recruiting each one of them and kind of what stood out initially about them?
Well, with Kamari's kind of down in my recruiting area of Florida. Actually, he's in Coach Hodges' area. That's on the other side of the state. But we both have some familiar ties down in that area. So with Kamari, I knew a bunch of people or a bunch of coaches in the area that knew him personally and had played against him, and everyone spoke highly about his character, his running style. And once I got a chance to see him in practice, everything that people had kind of advertised, it stood out to me. So for me, he was a bit of a no-brainer. He's not the biggest kid, but he runs hard. He's extremely talented. And a little bit different with Terrell. Terrell, we kind of stumbled upon later. It's not that I didn't know about him, but he was already verbally committed to Purdue. And then when things kind of went south at Purdue, coaching changed and all that stuff, I kind of reached back out to him, followed up, and that's kind of where his recruiting. So his recruiting was a little bit later in the process than Kamari's. But once I watched the tape and I saw that he had such a broad skill set, with running receiver, quarterback, running back, I knew he kind of fit something different that we didn't have in the room. I felt like at the moment, which is a guy that could do a little bit of everything. And that was what drew me to him.
All right, Coach. Next question is from Elliot Clough.
Hey, Coach Betts. So obviously the run game wasn't as maybe as productive as you guys would have liked in those first two games. And then obviously LeSean has this big game, and two freshmen come in and are productive on this last Saturday. Obviously, Western Michigan and Penn State are two very different opponents. I guess, how do you take that momentum, or what did you see up front that was working so well for the offensive line and made things work for your guys, and how do you take that into Penn State?
As far as the guys up front, I think the confidence is growing with those guys. They have a year under their belt. A lot of those guys are returning starters, and Coach Barnett's doing a great job with them. And I think we just had a good game plan coming into the past week for that team, and those guys just gelled and just rolled them out of there. I think we have an aggressive line that doesn't mind hitting people, and that's not something that you can always say about each line every year. Is that we do have a bunch of guys that are willing to put their shoulder pads and helmets on people. And when you have a line like that, sometimes you got to let them roll. And I think we did that last week. And we try. And to your point, we understand Penn State and Western Michigan are two different teams. That's no knock on Western Michigan or anything, but Penn State is ranked where they are for a reason, and we don't take that lightly. But we also feel like we're quite capable of getting the job done if need be.
All right, next question is from Chad Leistico.
Looked like Jazz Patterson was doing a really nice job as a third down back against Iowa State. Obviously, you lose that. Would LeSean kind of be your main blocking back? And how about the two true freshmen? Are they is one or the other maybe acclimating to that blocking back role as needed?
I think. Well, I've tried to get both of them reps in those scenarios, because anybody can be hurt or down at any given moment. But to go back to the beginning of your question, LeSean is a guy that has experience in that role, really first, second, and third down. So he would be the first candidate in that situation. But with the other two, I don't really see one as ahead of the other one in terms of third down. I think they're both capable. We've worked long and hard, especially back during training camp. We did one-on-ones with linebackers and pass protection, probably more often than they wanted to at times. But it's to build for these moments. So they're all capable of doing it.
Next question is from Scott Docterman.
Yeah, I wanted to just ask you kind of that fine line of emphasizing the really important fundamental parts of this game, whether it's ball security, especially at a place like Penn State. You don't know how many possessions you're going to get and how important each possession is, but then not have them overthink those moments and just play freely. How do you approach those two scenarios just to make sure that mentally they understand the importance of it, but they don't make it get into their head at the wrong time?
I don't think it really, just from my experience working with these guys, I don't really think it gets into their head in terms of the reminders about ball security, because I do that during the game sometimes. If I see the ball sometimes getting loose, or what I perceive as being loose, I'll yell at them while they're on the field, hey, and I'll give them this sign, and they know what I'm talking about. So I'm always trying to preach that to them, because especially on the road, you just can't afford turnovers, and we don't want to do anything that's self-inflicting. If they get the ball out of our hands, it needs to be a heck of a play by them, not something that we did carelessly. And just reemphasizing that, I don't think it puts any more anxiety on those guys, because that's what we preach every day anyway, is ball security, whether it's the backs, quarterbacks, receivers, everyone's getting that same reinforcements every day.
All right, next question is from Cooper Worth.
Hey, Coach, I know you said the success in the run game was due to the aggressiveness and confidence of the offensive line. With that said, I'm just curious about your impressions with right tackle Jennings Dunker and how he's played so far, and if you think he fits that build.
I think Jennings has done great. I think it's been a good transition for him going to tackle. You just never know how things are going to unfold when somebody goes to a new spot or a new position. But it fits like a glove to me when I watch him play. He's got good athleticism. He's huge. You walk by him, he's a mammoth of a young man. But he's settled in really well, and I think he's having a good year so far. And we just need to keep building on that. Keep instilling confidence in these guys. And week after week, we know every team presents a challenge, but we know we're capable of meeting that challenge.
All right, Coach, it looks like the last question will be from Dargan Southard.
Yeah, I know you guys preach, obviously, next man in, and, you're one snap away from being in there if you're not playing, particularly at the running back position where the physicality nature is certainly there. But when it plays out this dramatically as it has over the last couple of weeks, you know, even a veteran like Leshawn, who, you know, had one carry at Iowa State, and now he's, you know, at the top of the chain going into this trip. When it plays out like that, how much does that, you know, really hammer home to everybody in the room that, you know, things can change abruptly and everybody has to be ready to adjust, you know, week to week even?
Well, you just said it yourself. It becomes a reality. It's no longer a talking point. It's a reality. And as much as you can try to preach that to someone, reality is the best lesson. It's the best teacher, and they're facing it right now. And I said all along, I remember doing interviews, I think back when we had media day, and someone asked me about, you know, feature back and how do you do the carries? And I said, listen, you need multiple backs because the season is long. It's a grueling position. You just never know. And I've always told the guys that, and whether they sometimes hear it, and, you know, it's natural when you're the third or fourth guy to kind of feel like, do they believe in me or whatever? But understanding that, hey, your time can come any given moment. And I think they're all living that reality right now. That's why you always have to work, no matter where you are on the depth chart or where you think you are on the depth chart. You have to work, because if your number is called, you don't want to be the guy that wasn't ready because you were too busy sulking or caught up in your feelings about not getting playing time. It could have been easy for Leshawn to feel some type of way after only getting one carry against Iowa State. And he and I talked too. And I said, hey, you never know. Next week could be your week. And sure enough, it was his week. And that's, it's a life lesson for all of them. And I think it's good for the younger guys to see that too, is never take any rep in practice, never take any situation for granted, because you could be the next guy in.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning, Ladell.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ladell.
Thank you.